All right. Hello, wonderful people of MozCon. I'm so excited to be here. Ashley mentioned I'm the director of analytics at IMI. It's a San Diego-based agency, but I'm personally living out of Phoenix, Arizona. Any Arizona people here? Oh, kind of awkward. All right. I freaking love MozCon. There's so many reasons. Yeah, exactly. So many reasons why I love MozCon, and one of the big reasons is all the awesome people here. And the reason why I just think that we're all so cool and awesome is because we're passionate about what we do. We care about the marketing that we put out there, and we care about everything that we produce, including content. We love awesome content. Uh-oh. If I think it'll actually work, because I see a green light. Shazam? We might have to improvise a little bit, so while I'm going to guess that they might, oh, there we go. All right, the content, the awesome content thing, because we actually care about, thank you, what we put out there. We all have a part in creating content. You know, either we design it, we, do all the marketing to kind of push it out there, and we all have a part to play in awesome content, or content we think is awesome. You see, not all content's going to work out. Very complicated process. That's why we charge people to do it. There's a lot of variability, a lot of people to kind of work with, and there's just a lot of room for error. So some content's going to be great, some content is not going to be so great. So how do we know when content works and when it doesn't work? Data, web analytics. In fact, web analytics should tell us how people get to and through our content. And you have to look at it that way because there's a lot of things going on with content. And it's not about the content piece itself. It's about the acquisition. It's about the follow-through. It's about the conversion that might occur later on. There's a large story to measure and to try to tell inside our reporting. The problem is that we're often pretty poor at measuring content success. We just kind of put the basic analytics tracking code on the site and kind of look at some standardized reports like this. So we see page views. That's one important piece of the puzzle, of course. We have average time on site and bounce rate. Those metrics at times just flat out lie to you. I'll talk about that in a little bit. We have page value up there. I'm not even going to talk about that. Let's just ignore that for now. If we're just relying on that basic tracking code and these standardized reports, we're not telling the story about our content like we should be. We're just doing a very bad job about that. But I'm not saying that in a way that's kind of supposed to bash you or anything, because honestly, I see it as actually a very difficult thing, and we're kind of set up for failure a little bit. One reason is that we're not really tracking content interaction. When you just put that basic tracking code on the site, it says tracking page views. What about people reading it? In this case, we're looking at the Moz Beginner's Guide to SEO, and there's a lot of kind of content interactions you can do here. There's scrolling and reading, downloading the PDF button. There's a nifty little chapter navigation box. There's even clicking around on the social share buttons. Now, how do you think, are people actually interacting with the page in that way? I don't know. More importantly, Moz doesn't know. And I checked their site code, so I know they're not tracking those things. And again, it's not, again, to bash them. I'm not here to make enemies or anything. It's not tracking these things natively. We're just tracking page views right there. The other challenge is that analysis is hard. It's hard to know how do I even find the performance of my content? A lot of those interactions I was talking about in the previous slide, and we can do that through event tracking, which I'll talk about a little bit. Event tracking reporting is weird. You can get all the data in there, and it's actually very unstructured, and you can kind of easily get lost, so you don't know what to do with it. And at times, it's hard to connect when people interact with our content and actually lead a conversion. We kind of don't know what report to look at. In general, it's actually very hard to know what reports you should be looking at to find the answers that you're looking for. I have one kind of brand new client who's very eager to get into the analytics, which is awesome, and they admit they're a total noob at it, and they're like, Adrian, I'm trying to analyze how people are going through the site and everything, and I was looking at this behavior flow report, and it's so confusing. And I was like, yeah, it is. Slow your roll a little bit. Let's find something easier so you know how to find success in your reporting. So we have those two sides of things. We have the tracking side. We have to track the right things. And then we have to know how to find the data. I'm going to talk a little bit about both, a little more emphasis on the technical side at the moment. So be warned, I'm not going to go way too technical, just a little bit to get dangerous, because we have to talk about it. So all that advanced content tracking that I talked about, all you have to do to kind of get all that extra data is to put some JavaScript code on the site. Just slap some code on the site. Some MozCon alumni might cringe at the whole, just do this, just do that, because I think we had Will Reynolds at previous times say you can't just do things, because it kind of diminishes the overall effort it takes to do these things. And there is effort to kind of do this kind of event tracking. You have people that have to know code, they have to kind of know how it works with the HTML on the site. You have to kind of get your objectives in line. And it's a complicated process. And even another part of that complicated process is even after you put all the code together and you've tested it out and everything, you have to give the code to IT to put it on the website, which that's fun, right? Yeah. They've got enough critical issues that they deal with, like just keeping the website up all the time. They don't want to be dealing with all these various GA tracking code requests over and over and over again. They're going to get sick of you. Be like, hey, can you put this, quickly put this GA event tracking code so we can track these social share clicks and do it today? No, they're going to be like, mañana. Yeah, we'll take care of that later. So there's one thing that can kind of help eliminate some of these hurdles, and that's Google Tag Manager. I freaking love Google Tag Manager. In fact, I love any kind of tag manager usage in general. So if it's Google Tag Manager or Signal Tag or anything else, who here uses Tag Manager? Any kind of tag manager. OK, good. I love you all. Everybody else, I still love you too. Don't worry. It's just that you're kind of like my good friend where I just tell you about a favorite band and you don't know about it. And it's like, I must share this awesomeness with you kind of thing. You must embrace Google Tag Manager. It's free. It's powerful. It's flexible. It's awesome. And even though there are a couple of Googlers in the audience, I am not being paid for this kind of endorsement. Although, Adam, wherever you are, I don't mind that at all. So with Google Tag Manager, you have one container code to put on your site. So you still need some IT involvement. Buy them a beer, just be nice to them, and you kind of take care of that part of it. And you've got that container code in place. And through that interface, you have this centralized way to kind of manage all the different extra tracking strips and tags you want to put on your site, as opposed to just hacking them into the website code and kind of creating a Frankenstein of a website. That's messy. It's dirty. Google Tag Manager makes it very efficient to manage all of that. Now, there's no way that we can kind of go over a whole course of Google Tag Manager in this setting. And I'm not going to try to oversimplify things way too much. It is a tool that needs some expertise behind it. So I'm going to share some learning resources later on. But I want to at least share enough of how powerful it is and what the opportunity is, so that even if you're not the person that's going to manage within Google Tag Manager, you at least know what it can do and tell people back in your organization, hey, we need to use this because this is what it can do. Now, some important objects that you kind of deal with inside Google Tag Manager. There are tags. This is what's going to fire. Then there's triggers. This is basically the rules of when a tag is going to fire. And then you have variables. These are the various values that are used within the tags and triggers. So there's an interrelationship between all these different objects. And I'm going to go through a quick setup process here. So step one, you just choose a tag. So you can choose a Google Analytics tag and various other tags too, like AdWords conversion scripts or things like that. Couple things I want to point out is that some people say, hey, Adrian, we don't need Google Tag Manager. We already have analytics implemented on the site. That's cool. Leave that there. But you can use Google Tag Manager to add the extra event tracking much easier. And then the other thing is that people always associate Google Tag Manager as only relevant for Google Analytics. It's great for GA, but it's actually great for any kind of tracking that you want to use. So definitely embrace it. Triggers, the idea of when do I want it to fire. on certain pages, on certain clicks, on certain form submissions. This is where you can kind of configure those simple rules right there. The idea of setting up a trigger is say, hey, I want to fire something when somebody clicks on an element, an HTML element that has an ID of example in this case, and there you go. Some people are like, well, how do I find that information? And a quick tip is that you can use the Chrome DevTools. You can kind of right-click on an element and inspect element, and you kind of get that HTML view. And you get all these different attributes that are tied to that HTML element. And it's all those attributes that are potential kind of trigger points to say, OK, when an ID has this kind of value, this is where I want event tracking to occur. So there's a lot of opportunities with that. And again, I don't want to oversimplify it. There's a lot to learn about Google Tag Manager. So one way to kind of learn more about it is at Analytics Academy, the kind of educational resource that Google put out. Just recently released a Google Tag Manager Fundamentals course. Definitely go through it. It'll give you a very good comprehensive view of how to use the tool and really just kind of get more knowledgeable of it. And then for anybody in this room that's like, I'm technical, Adrian, I can figure this stuff out. This guy, Simo Aheva, he's like wicked sick smart on Google Tag Manager. It's awesome. He knows so many things. So if you want to learn more about the technical side of Google Tag Manager, follow this guy. What I'm going to do now is actually show some different scenarios of, hey, what are the things I can track within Google Tag Manager very easily? And just so you know, I have a link at the end of the slide, and you can, of course, download the deck and everything, to a blog post where I basically put all the links I reference and some extra items in there so you have a better idea of where to get these instructions. Now, tracking content scrolling. This is helpful so that you know for a piece of content, in addition to getting the page view metrics, we want to know when people start reading it or when they reach the bottom of the content or even reach the bottom of the page, the whole HTML document. You can get those numbers and kind of see the readability of your different pieces of content so we know which ones have a higher share of scrolling to page views than others and kind of know which content's working or not. Then you have the ability to track outbound links. Maybe you have certain pages, certain content where you're meant to kind of link out to other resources, and you want to know, well, are people even clicking those links? Yeah, you should track those. And instead of manually doing it inside your website code, there are very simple instructions to automatically track any kind of outbound links on your website and send it as events into Google Analytics. Videos. I love this one because if you have videos on your site that, of course, people are supposed to engage in and you're not currently tracking them, this is currently a big void in that whole page view, and are they really doing anything after that kind of scenario. So we've got instructions here for both YouTube tracking and Vimeo tracking automatically done via the instructions in Google Tag Manager. And then sometimes, even though I'm talking about beyond the page view, sometimes the page view we have to worry about. A lot of us are building these dynamically driven websites that load new content via Ajax, and that basic tracking code already ran once, and it's probably not going to run again. So here's some instructions here to actually work with an Ajax site so that when the history state changes, you have a trigger based on that to fire new page view every single time that occurs. So these are just some examples. Again, I don't have way too much time. And the link I will have on my blog will actually have these resources plus other items like tracking file downloads, even like SoundCloud embeddable widget tracking. There's even, oddly enough, there was already a Konami code reference earlier today. There's even a link to add the Konami code through GTM so that when somebody does it on your website, you can make it do something. It's up to you what you want it to do. So more Konami code references. So you're like, OK, Adrian, we're tracking all this information. I'm tracking the video events. I'm tracking the scrolling events. And I'm sending all this data into Google Analytics. And it's like, great. I don't know what you're doing with it. And again, that kind of brings us back to that second challenge of the fact that analysis is hard. We collect a lot of data. It sits there, and we kind of don't know what to do with it. The biggest thing I can emphasize is that we have to be better analysts here. The web analytics tools that we use were not just built for web analysts. They're built for digital marketers. Because if we want to be successful in our marketing campaigns, we have to know how to analyze the data because we have all the context of why we push content out a certain way and why we design it. So we have to embrace the idea of being analysts. And again, that's like a whole other course to kind of learn about, but I'm going to talk about a few quick tips about how to do so. I talked about event tracking, that it can be a little obscure. As you learn a little bit about event tracking through the Search Engine Watch link that we have right there, you at least understand a little bit about where to go inside GA to look at event reporting and start to get some understanding of the flexible hierarchy. You have categories, action, labels, and you can kind of drill into it different ways to kind of get your perfect report. The other thing about kind of configuring is that the key to using an analytics tool is to know how to drill through, set up your primary dimensions, secondary dimensions, all like your perfect metrics and everything, and you say, OK, this is the perfect report. And then you go back the next day and you try to retrace the steps, and it just adds more time. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Whenever you configure your perfect report, create a shortcut. It saves that exact same configuration that you worked with, you give it a name, and now it's a link inside your left-hand navigation menu. And then even beyond that, once you kind of have your perfect specific reports, you can add them to a dashboard. So you have this one end-all, be-all place where you go to see your specific reports, the ones with information you're exactly looking for. Then the other thing is segmentation, slicing and dicing your data. This is like analytics jujitsu that all of us should embrace here, because segmentation is the way to kind of let us see the very specific scenarios broken down on a website, especially when it comes to content performance. Maybe I want to look at sessions where people viewed a video, did they convert? Or maybe I can do user-based segmentation and say, OK, did a person that landed on this key piece of content, did they eventually convert? Maybe multiple visits later on. All these kinds of conditional items that you want to look at is available with segmentation. It's one of the most absolutely powerful features you should use in Google Analytics. And again, this is all relying on the fact that we're tracking the data. It's important to get our tracking right. It's important to know how to analyze. And I know those things sound obvious, but we may not be doing that well enough. And the challenge I have for you all is to kind of embrace the different resources that I linked out to, and just the education of Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics in general, so that you make sure your tracking infrastructure is correct and that the business and the strategy that you want to build off of it will come through from that because you know how to analyze. Again, just some resources on the blog post that I have right there, including what I already referenced. There's some more GTM tracking tips, a custom GA dashboard that just to kind of quickly capture some of those things, and even a Google Tag Manager container preloaded with some of the cool GTM tricks I talked about, so you can just kind of import it into Google Tag Manager. And that's all I have today.
I love how you say that, that's all I have today. Everyone was like furiously taking notes. So here's the thing. There are a lot of questions. People are like, how do I do this? And what tool do I use? And what about this? And what about that? So we're not going to be able to get to all of them.
OK.
So you can stalk him after. The other thing, what we might be able to do is, if we're finding that there are just a ton of questions, we will maybe work on getting a blog post that digs in a little deeper, or a webinar or something like that, that we can dig in a little deeper, right? Because everyone was like, what? That is awesome. One of the questions that came up, actually multiple people have asked about different tools. So whether it's a tool like Chartbeat or tools like, what were the other ones mentioned? Seriously, I'm scrolling because everybody just has so many questions. What were the other ones?
And these are probably about what tools?
Crazy Egg, Wistia for video, right? So there are all these other tools that do similar types of things for similar to other, other things. So, what's your recommendation? Is it easier to use those other things? What about Site Catalyst? What about Omniture? Anyway.
Yeah. So
you have, 30 seconds. No,
like,
I'm just kidding.
Different types of tools involved right here. So when we talk about something like Crazy Egg, or just kind of like these extra tracking type things, they're just meant to send data to some other service. It's similar to Google Analytics, where it's just another analytics collection tool. So something like Crazy Egg, there's some instructions out there to implement Google Tag Manager efficiently, and it's very doable. There are some tools that don't play well with any kind of tag manager, specifically the CRO type tools like Optimizely and things like that. Like you could technically force it to happen, but it's not recommended because the way that those CRO tools want you to load the code, they want you to load it extremely early so that people don't see that visible flicker if you're trying to do an A/B test with them. And just the Google Tag Manager placement does not meet that exact same speed of trying to reduce that flicker. So that's usually one recommendation to not do. And then again, just like I was saying with Crazy Egg, there's lots and lots of tags that usually say, yeah, that can go to GTM, that can go to GTM. Adobe, slightly different. It's just more recommended that you're using the Adobe Tag Manager system because it's just more catered to that platform.
All right. So honestly, I'm not going to dig into any of these other questions because I think they're a lot more in depth than we can do in the minute that we have left. But I would highly recommend that you chase him down. Sorry. He's like, great. Hopefully you'll be out at the Moz crawl tonight,
yes.
and then you can get even more questions, and we'll dig a little deeper.
You can buy me free beers at the sponsored events.
Buy him some beers. Anyway, thank you so much, Adrian. Can we get a big round of applause for Adrian?
Thank you. Thank you.